Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second installment of the eBills webinar. My name is Sadiq from MPA. So today we're grateful to have esteemed panelists deliver short presentations on various aspects of the topic, including a demo. So these presentations will be followed by a question and answer session at the end. Before we begin proper, some admin announcements. So at the bottom of your screen, of your Zoom screen, you will see a chat function and a Q&A function. If you have any questions during the proceedings, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. The chat function is disabled. So your questions will be picked up during the actual Q&A session after the presentations are done. So with that, I would like to introduce the host of the event, Mr. Kenneth Lim, Assistant Chief Executive Officer for Industry MPA. Kenneth, please.
Thank you, Sadiq. Good afternoon, good morning to everyone. Thank you for taking time to attend our webinar today. This is the second webinar we are organizing this year on the theme of maritime trade digitalization with a focus on the bill of lading. The reason why we organized this is because we saw a good response in the first webinar in March, covering legal certainty, accreditation, and sharing by the industry users on their EBL journey. More than 250 attendees from Singapore and overseas across shipping, trading, banks, legal, and technology solution companies sign up. And we're happy to see even greater interest this time around. I was told that there are more than 400 sign up across the globe. We are glad to see interest from industry members such as the industry, the international organization and trade association like DINCO, DCSA, UN agencies, Trade Commission, Chambers of Commerce from US, Canada, UK, Israel, and of course, locally Singapore Business Federation, Singapore Shipping Association, and Singapore Chamber of Maritime Arbitration. This interest, not only from industry to agency, but also from academia, such as meta expert from NUS, NTU in Singapore, King's College London, Copenhagen Business School, Doshiya from Japan University's Law School. I think this really shows the great interest from many stakeholders and the requirement of many stakeholders in pushing ahead digitalization in the bill of lading. As the Maritime Lead Agency in Singapore, MPA is committed to accelerate the adoption of electronic bill of lading in supply chain. We work very closely with our sister agencies in Singapore to achieve this, and I'm glad that they are here. The Infocom Media Development Authority, IMDA, drives digital cross-border trade, and they actually champion the amendment of Singapore Electronic Transaction Act. Monetary Authority of Singapore, MAS, our central bank, as well as the leading growth of fintech companies and solutions. Enterprise Singapore, we call them ESG, supporting the growth of commodity traders, shippers, freight forwarders, and logistic companies. And last but not least, Singapore Customs that facilitate efficient and secure cross-border trade. Now, earlier in April, we launched a call for proposal that is supported by IMDA and the Digital Container Shipping Association to encourage industry adoption of EBLs. Welcome many industry partners and yourself to explore EBL pilot projects or to get some support, develop or enhance your trade documentation solution. For today's, but before that, let me also just say that I also like to take this chance to share about Singapore Chamber of Maritime Arbitration webinar that will be held tomorrow from 3 to 5 p.m. Now, SCMA has brought together leading industry experts to talk about recent development in maritime law and arbitration, views from England and Singapore. Would highly encourage you to register if you are interested to understand more from the legal perspective. And I'd like to thank Puneet for pushing this front. So this is the webinar. Tomorrow, the SCMA will be organizing. Now back to today's webinar. I'm honored to have the panelists from diverse backgrounds to offer their views and insight. And I'd like to thank each and every one of them. Gadi, which is CEO and co-founder at Wave BL, and he will be providing a demonstration and sharing of how Wave BL supports carriers, banks, freight forwarders, shippers, and traders for their cross-border trading and financing transaction. Andrea, Global Chief Digital and Information Officer of MSC, he will be sharing about benefits and his experience in scaling up use of EBLs for its operation. Atu, co-founder of Singapore headquarters DLT Leisure, who will also be providing a demonstration and sharing on their plug-and-play approach towards digitalizing supply chain. Last but not least, Himanshu, Executive Director, Head of Trade Products and Transaction Banking at Stanchart, to share about their strategy and experience towards supporting paperless trade and EBL being one of these documents. And there'll be other speakers, including my colleagues from IMDA, Sin Yong, and also Thomas, who will be moderating the panel. I hope you'll walk away from today's webinar with better understanding of EBL solution and the value to trade, and of course to them to translate this knowledge into action, to adopt and to support your client in adopting EBL in their business operation. And with that, I want to thank you everyone, and I wish you a fruitful discussion and webinar ahead. Thank you, and I hand over the time back to Sadiq.
Thank you, Kenneth. I'd like to now invite Gadi and Andre to start their presentation and demo, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sadiq and Mr. Lim. It's a real pleasure. I would like to thank yourself, of course, Sini, and of course, Mr. Andre Simcha, which kindly enough joined in order to share many of our successes. Andre, if you allow me, I will start with a quick presentation. In the presentation, we'll also... thank you very much. And then very quick presentation, as Mr. Lin promised, then we will move to the more interesting part, which is, of course, the demonstration. We'll have a quick demonstration. Don't worry, we will not bore you with a full trade transaction. So allow me to share my screen. Yes. Okay, so again, thank you very much for MPA for arranging this exciting event. So first of all, as mentioned, my name is Gadi Rushin, co-founder and CEO of Wave, and Andre Simcha, Global Chief of Digital and Information Officer at MSC, also leads the innovation, and a very passionate, sorry for speaking in your name, Andre, but Andre is also leading actually DCSA and many other industry initiatives in order to have a paperless world and a better world for the entire industry. And thank you very much for joining this session. So in very high level, what is Wave BL? Wave BL, and you will see, by the way, that the focus on my presentation will be to be as practical as possible, which means that paperless, of course, is very well discussed along the industry for many years, but especially these days. So I wanted to move from the high level and get everyone back to ground, to show you, to explain in practice and details day to day what you are going to do, because it's now available, which means that Andre will later on share will share some success stories and about his activity. But it's very important to always remember, we're not talking about pilots, we're not talking about aspirations, POCs, proof of concepts, or anything like that. We are talking about production in practice. You can start saving and reducing the amount of paper that you are using today, not in the future. And it works like that. Wave BL, just like what I just described, is a very practical tool. Wave takes the exact same business flow which is happening between the parties, which means that, of course, the producer will deliver a container to the ocean carrier, to MSC. Of course, we still don't have electronic containers. However, this is the only physical part that will remain after, which means that once you go paperless. MSC, receiving the container, will then issue a bill of lading, and instead of sending it by courier, by domestic courier, back to the exporter, it will travel electronically. Then it will be presented to the bank electronically. Everything stays just like today, but instead of an average of 10 to 14 days per transaction that takes today for a normal trade transaction, of course, we are turning it into minutes or maximum hours if complicated transaction that includes letters of credit are involved. Everything stays exactly the same, but fully electronic, of course, sustainable, efficient, and as quick as any other electronic solution. Some of the advantages, and sorry for being a salesperson, but eventually this is what I am. So of course, the adoption in the industry is already rising. Of course, MSC is the leader, and you will also you see it in the news, you see it all around the world. MSC took a very brave approach to lead digitization in the industry, but the industry adopts, which means that, and if you will follow specifically on Andre Simcha's activity, you will see that they are not trying to compete. They are not trying to dominate the market or to fight competitors. They are coming with a very open arm and are inviting others to join as well, other ocean carriers to join as well, and it works. They are doing an excellent work in that. The system itself is being adopted as mentioned, but it's not just because of the industry trend, it's also because of the very unique technological solution that is now available. Of course, you all heard about the blockchain. The blockchain is a huge buzzword, but the blockchain is just a tool. This tool allowed us to actually mirror the way that paper works today. Full privacy, just like in paper. Paper will normally be associated with inefficiencies, but it also has very high benefits. For example, it is physical, so you cannot use it multiple times or double spend in the blockchain terminology. It keeps privacy. It gives you, as a user, as a holder of this paper, full negotiability and 100% control over the cargo, which means that the title, but also on the data itself. And this ability is all implemented within the Wave system or network or protocol. You can refer to it in many different ways, but in practice, we just mirror or mimic the way that paper works today, because if your organization is used to working with paper, you will not want to have any compromises. So by mirroring paper, but making it much faster, much safer, and much less expensive, then of course we enjoy all the rewards. MSC, of course, is an industry leader, as mentioned, and then it's not just by adapting and making big headlines. They are also doing a lot of footwork. They are inviting their customers. Some of you here on the webinar most likely was already approached by by MSC in order to explore this new tool. They are taking an unbelievable strong approach. It's, by the way, I do want to say it's not just Wave. MSC supports multiple bills of lading, but of course I'm representing myself, so I will focus on Wave. MSC is 100% devoted to ensure that this time it will work. Many of you have tried going digital in the past. Now it will work, and of course you will see, you will also understand why. It's the legal infrastructure, it's the industry momentum, it's the technology, and it's also the very high commitment of the maritime shipping industry, led by, of course, MSC, as I mentioned. But if you look at the carriers industry as an industry, and this is something that is quite surprising, but they are the first to adopt the blockchain in a large scale. They are using it, of course, for their own solutions, which is the EBL, as well as other initiatives. But actually, the carriers industry are showing a very innovative spirit and are taking the lead, and it works in practice. Andre will share some more information as we move forward. As promised, I love speaking, of course, and I can keep on going forever, but I promised a demonstration, so we'll move to that. So allow me to stop sharing for a second and move to share the demonstration itself, which is, of course, a live demonstration. By the way, Andre, if you want to jump in and correct me or anything, or just improve, of course, feel free.
No, I'll let you load the demo. If you have problems with the demo, I can always
you will let me say whatever I want, and then you will just correct me towards the end.
Exactly.
Excellent. So here I'm sharing my screen. Okay, so just to explain what we are saying, so in very high level, let me also stop my video for a second so that we can focus. So Wave is a fully decentralized tool, which means that leading players can install Wave on their own premise. Why is it important? Because when you install Wave on your own premise, just like in paper, you are not subjected to any company. You are not your information is not visible to anyone else. It's just impossible for any of your competitors to get any business intelligence, and not only competitors, also Wave itself. Of course, privacy sometimes might sound like something which is maybe not crucial, and of course, visibility in the supply chain in many cases is welcome. However, not when it comes to the documents. These documents are representing all the trade secrets of any buyer, seller, bank, or any other, and by the way, carriers as well. And by our ability, of course, to provide a fully decentralized network that can be used as a standalone online, just like I'm presenting now, just like a SaaS service, but also later to migrate it to your own servers, allows basically the ability to have both simplicity or full privacy and control over your documents and trade data. So let me log in. And of course, Wave likes always checking if I'm a robot or not. Usually I manage to beat the system. Let's hope that I will succeed this time as well. Good, we managed. And I've prepared a quick demonstration. This is a live demonstration, but of course there are no live data here. Everything is 100% dummy data. And I will actually start from an exporter, generic name, of course. And let me show you how the system looks and feels like, and what will be your actual experience once you just join this network. So first of all, from the first glimpse, you can see that Wave looks and feels like an email. It's a very simple and intuitive user interface. There is absolutely no complexities to onboard and to start using the system. But unlike an email, you can see that inside these envelopes, in our terminology, it's envelopes, of course, you can see that the center of attention or the center of our envelopes is, of course, the documents. In this specific envelope, we received from MSC a bill of lading and a cover letter. The bill of lading itself, when we open it up, you can see that it's a normal bill of lading. This specific one is, of course, it's an MSC bill of lading, it's a draft. You can see that nothing is actually changed. You have the exact same bill of lading that yourself, your operators, depends of course on who you are, the same bill of lading that the industry is used to, even the same legal legal environment. I do want to say that Singapore have actually taken a very interesting, let's say like that, or a very industry leading approach of going and even establishing a law to support paperless trade. And I can tell you that Wave specifically, of course, is and will adapt in order to allow our users to enjoy the Singaporean laws. But in very high level, everything stays exactly the same. The only difference is, of course, that it is mentioned that this is an electronic bill of lading, because electronic bill of lading needs to be electronic through its entire lifetime. We don't want anyone to mistakenly think that he can print the bill of lading and just go to the port with a printed version. So it's mentioned here, everything else is the same. And of course, behind the scenes, this is another big activity that MSC is leading. Also the metadata, which means that the structured data can be supported. In some cases, it's already supported, of course, based on the DCSA standards, which mean that it's not just about getting PDFs across the supply chain. We are talking about PDFs together with structured data. And once you integrate Wave to your trade management system, this, of course, will allow you to also automate and improve internal processing. Carriers will share the data based on the standards that are being built now in the industry, and later on, of course, you will enjoy it. Not only digitization, but also efficiency and internal operation automation. So the bill of lading looks exactly the same, but you can see that in here, we mention possessor. Possessor means that Wave recognized that this is a bill of lading that was issued by MSC and it's a unique document. We use the blockchain technology in order to manage that in a decentralized manner. Possessor means I have the original. Just like in the paper world, I know that I have the original because it's in my hand. In the electronic world, we have exactly the same user experience, let's say like that. Wave mentioned that we are the possessor, which is just like in the physical world. I have the original or not. Below is the legal status. I have actually issued a to-order bill of lading because I wanted to present a more sophisticated type of transaction where the consignee is same as shipper. This will normally be used for trade transactions such as letters of credit and many other transactions. The nice and interesting part about trade is that you have an endless amount of scenarios, which mean that every scenario that you can think of course, exists in trade. And this is why we took a very, I would say, simple approach of just digitizing the documents and being an enabler, just supporting every trade documents, every trade activity, everything that is being done across the supply chain in a simple and quick and efficient way. And sorry for this long explanation, but in this specific scenario, the shipper and the consignee, both of their rights are actually held by the exporter, just like in any other to-order bill of lading. So I have the bill of lading. The cover letter is just a cover letter. Here, if I will open it up, you will see that it's just a simple document which is saying cover letter, just to show that Wave is an envelope. It's not just an EBL tool. Every document that is being set across the supply chain, from the very complicated documents of titles such as bills of lading, bills of exchange, prom notes, and other, and up to the medium documents, we like to refer to them like that, certificates of origin, inspection, phytosanitary certificates, and others, and up to the very simple documents like invoice, packing list, cover letters, bank schedules. Everything is supported, and Wave wraps each document based on its commercial and regulatory requirements. So you can see that the bill of lading is managed on the blockchain. We track the possession and we track the title, while the cover letter is just electronically signed, which means that you can verify the authenticity of this document. You can verify the source in a decentralized manner, by the way. But afterwards, it will also allow you to, of course, support any document in a very simple manner. How it works for the following: we will now forward the document and present it to a bank. So I forwarded the envelope. I wrote here the documents for LC 12345. Of course, you can see that I can share it with whoever I want, but I will send it to my trade bank. And later on, I will also add other documents, because when you present, of course, an envelope to the bank, you will also need to have an invoice, packing list. So I will just do that. We'll add an invoice for the purpose of this demonstration. Of course, just like in the just like in today's world, you, instead of printing the invoice and putting it in a courier envelope, you just save it as PDF and import it into Wave, and then you add an electronic signature to it. Now, it's very important to know that Wave does not require you to draft your documents by yourself. It is done, of course, completely as your internal policies today. And once you actually integrate Wave to your TMS, then you don't need to have any. Actually, it tends to be just like today, which means that Wave becomes a documentary component behind the scenes. There is no need to work on the Wave interface, and everything works exactly like today. The invoice, by the way, it's just a normal invoice, which is generated by an SAP system. And now we just save it as PDF and import it into Wave. I do want to show just one more step. I will actually take off the cover letter, because of course, in many cases, and Singapore, of course, is a very important trade hub. Transparency, as I said, is a very, I would say, strong term, which is spreading now in the industry. However, transparency in trade is, of course, a dead end, which means that if a trader will not be able to replace the invoice or even switch the EBL, just like he's doing today, so trade will not exist, more or less. So in Wave, of course, if you received an envelope with a document, you took it out, you send it to the next participant, then of course, the recipient will not know what you held in your hand, which means that just like in a courier envelope, everything is done the same, but electronically. The bill of lading will also need to be endorsed, just like in the paper world. You see, I'm sending the possession, but I also need to transfer the title. So I will endorse the bill of lading. I can do blank endorsement. I can do to order. Just like today, any type of transaction that you are used to, you will be able to continue to do. You will be able to continue just like today. So I will endorse it directly to the trade bank or make a blank endorsement. I'll endorse it, and I can add some notes or something like that, but I can just send. Of course, I can add additional documents if are required based on the transaction. So I will send, just like an email, the envelope was sent. Behind the scenes, there are many security mechanisms. All the different security standards are, of course, supported. The documents are encrypted. They are sent fully P2P between the Wave applications across the network. The blockchain, of course, is decentralized, but everything else is as well. The minute we send the documents, we are losing the possession, just like today, and the documents are already with my bank in that specific scenario, or if I send it directly to my consignee, or if I have freight forwarders. It doesn't matter what is a trade scenario that you are used to, everything will stay exactly the same. I have also prepared, just to show you the benefit, this was actually presented to MPA last week. So I've presented a very, a more, I would say, sophisticated envelope, which is more representative of how things are working today in your day-to-day life. So in here, I've prepared actually an envelope that involves a cover letter, a bill of lading, which is a copy, a packing list, a invoice, inspection lab, everything. By the way, just to be very clear, we support any names that you are seeing here, of course, are completely generic and doesn't necessarily mean that they are in the network itself. But I do want to show and to point out that everything that you are doing, all your trade activity can be digitized today, and it's just it's just for you to try and to explore and to see how you can improve the efficiency in your day-to-day activity and go digital in a very high level. Andre, I think that I have finished. I've managed to complete a full demonstration in a live environment without any hiccups, so I'm proud of myself even on that. But I think that we should now take it to the next level and also hear the professional.
Certainly, Gary. Thank you very much. Well, the good news is, I think you've explained the solution. I think you've also, thank you for the introduction. You've explained also the goals that we're all working towards. And to be very honest, I remember one of the first EBL solutions probably 25 years ago, since I've been in this industry for quite a long time. And I think that the solutions are there. Wave, of course, is a little bit different from the other solutions. It's a network, which of course allows us also in the future to transfer all sorts of documents. And I think that's also very important for everyone to understand. I was looking at the chat with some of the questions. What else can I tell you? I think we should answer if there's questions on the chat, or I can also speak for a few hours nonstop.
We are doing an excellent job together. Sure. Would you like to take the lead on the questions?
Let me take a look.
Sure.
Of course, I think what's important to say is that yes, we're very happy with the solution. As you mentioned, we also use other EBL solutions because we're always in line with the customer requirements, and I think that's important. What I think we need to say in this webinar is that it's very important to get all the parties on board, and I think if you look at the supply chain, it's a chain, and the same thing goes for the documentation, which is one of the very heavy processes for carriers, but also for customers. So I think if we look at the e-bill of lading, which in my opinion is the difficult document to digitize, because you have so many different parties involved. You have banks, of course, when there's a letter of credit. You have the ports, the customs authorities, we mentioned that. And that document actually gets transferred from one party to the other until it reaches the end of its journey. It's endorsed. So I think looking at the bill of lading is very important. And as you mentioned, we're doing that job also with DCSA in terms of data standards, in the future also interoperability, which was, I think, one of the questions. But for me, this is only the beginning. We now need to work on all the other documents that need to be transferred for successful transactions, and I think that's something which is extremely important. Lastly, and then I'll let others speak. I think we saw that during the pandemic, because documents couldn't be transferred using regular courier services, we had to find solutions, and I think that's helped us perhaps to accelerate the need for the EBL, and that's a very positive thing. And of course, we are a very big supporter of that as MSC and with DCSA. So that was my monologue. Now, do we have any questions? Is it Sadiq? Are you managing this, or should we just take a look at the chat?
Yeah, so we can take questions on the fly, or we can do it right at the end. So I think we can move on now.
So maybe I think can be quite interesting. Also, I understood that maybe we will share a bit of our current activity in Singapore. I think that the audience will be excited. Andre, would you like to? This is more of your activity, less mine. Would you like to try to touch this point, or?
Certainly, unless Kenneth wants to talk about it, that's perfectly fine as well. Look, I think that we're very much in favor of pilots. I think that when you come up with a solution, you need to create pilots. You need to get people on board. You need to make them understand how the solution works and also what benefits it can bring. In the case here, we've been doing a pilot between customers in various countries, and of course with the support of MPA, and we transferred 25 bills of ladings, if I'm not mistaken, as well as a lot of other documents, including the invoices, the packing lists, health certificates, and so on. And we're essentially now waiting for the vessel to arrive in Brazil, so that we can. Apologies. We're waiting for the vessel to arrive in Singapore to be able to proceed with the cargo release. And I think that once we've done that, we will really be able to understand better what are the benefits, who also has the benefits, because that's part of the questions, and then be able to produce a very, very interesting business case. I don't know, Kenneth, if you want to add something on that. No, so we'll do that afterwards.
Yes.
I see we have about 2 or 3 minutes, Gadi. So
Yes.
Is there anything that we missed? I think your demo was pretty clear.
I will want to say that, and sorry for our partnership with MSC. As I said, MSC is a big supporter. By the way, not only on EBL, also many other initiatives in the industry. But I think that this is one of the strong powers, specifically of MSC and of the maritime shipping industry. We had a business need. We wanted to present to many different stakeholders along the way that we can digitize. Again, the EBL is a center of trade. However, there are many other supporting documents, as Andre mentioned. Actually, there are dozens of, it's not only the bills of lading which are traveling, there are also dozens of containers which are actually traveling by sea. And as I always ask Andre, you have to now make your containers move as fast as my EBLs. But in practice, exactly 2 days after we saw that we wanted to present, there's a new set of laws now in Singapore, MSC brought a full transaction. This can also indicate to any other organization or a bank. The minute that you want to test, we will find the customers and the business need, and we will take care of everything around, because eventually digitizing trade is a very complicated mission that involves multiple parties, but it's not you yourself. It's actually the very designated and very talented team of Andre. It's not Andre personally, he has actually an excellent team which is which is managing this. And exactly in 5 minutes, we will create a proof of concept or a pilot, depends exactly on where you are, show you how it works, show you immediate ROI, show how the future of trade will happen to your organization, and it will be very fast. The wins, of course, are quick. The technology is there. The legal environment is there. Everything is supported just for you to test. And this is, I would say, the biggest thing that you should take from this webinar. And this is why I went very practical, to know that it's here, it exists, it works. It's now basically it's your turn to just try it, explore it, see that it works, see the benefits for your organization. We will ensure you, of course, that the process will be very supportive. And again, sorry for being such a salesman, but I'm sorry, it's just stronger than me. And I think
Thank you, Gadi. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sid.
Thank you, Gadi and Andre. Keep your questions coming in. We are receiving them through the Q&A. We will answer them either on the fly, or if not, we will try our best to address it at the Q&A session. So with that, I'd like to invite Atul now to start his presentation. Atul, over to you, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, it's good.
All right, cool. Let me just make sure that I can show my screen and just confirm you can see my screen as well.
Yes.
Cool. So thank you so much. That was a really good presentation, Gadi, and really exciting development. So I'm going to give a perspective which is coming from an angle of how customers are looking at this and how important this is in their part of the journey, right? So I work with DLT Ledger. DLT Ledger is a cross-border trade digitization platform, a Singaporean company with a global ambition. And we have done a number of things over the last 3.5 years in terms of working with corporates and SMEs and banks in terms of working on digitizing cross-border trade. And as we realized that this journey is not without the challenges. So we realized that the challenges are around how one could provide an end-to-end solution to a corporate or to a bank or to a shipper. And that requires you to come out with a framework which actually just goes beyond EBL and looks at how different documents that needs to be authenticated and transferred across multiple parties, and how you could make it easier and how you could make it secure between different parties, and how also you could get them to adopt this, as simple as having using the mobile phone to actually consent a particular type of document and link it up into blockchain network. So converting paper to digital, I think, is a common theme, but to really see it happen and make it happen across a wider scale, we are very proud about achieving that here in Singapore and in the region. So just to give a perspective of what we do as DLT Ledger, we are kind of a super connector, right? So we work together with the corporates, the banks, the SMEs, and central bank. Specifically with respect to corporates, on the trade topic, we kind of look at how we could help them in digitizing the cross-border trade, looking at pieces from linking up to their operational systems, converting that into smart contract, providing them with the finance visibility, working with the FIs, giving them with the ability to track, working together with carriers, looking at all the documents. We have done several trades, and picking up the last trade that we did, which had about 18 documents, and all of that document needed to be generated at source. While it's important for us to look at how, from the eyes of the corporate or from the eyes of the customer, that how they would like this to be simplified. So we kind of have worked really hard in terms of digitizing the trade execution piece for the corporates, and that's something we are very proud about in terms of number of corporates who are looking to our journey. In fact, one of the corporate who did that was the first trial that we did along with MPA and IMDA in April, where we had a shipment coming from Rotterdam into Vietnam that kind of was fully digitized using Singapore's Electronic Transaction Act, and also using a trade trust framework, which was fully integrated in DLT Ledger's network. So we are very proud about that. And it is already happening in a repeat transaction. Number of transactions have happened working together with ONE as well as PIL as the carriers who are looking to support all the digital trade from a cross-border trade point of view using electronic BL supported by Trade Trust. In general, if you look at where the industry is going, is as industry custodian, our job is to really simplify this topic to the customers. So customer, just judging by the question that went around when Gadi was presenting, there were several questions that comes up, and that makes this topic really difficult to get the adoption. So what do we need to do as an industry? We believe that we need to provide and plug and play environment, which is really easy for the corporate or a shipper to plug into their environment, make it easy for the ecosystem to come and consume it, and create that digitization index, which could move faster than the rate at which it is going currently. So we have been involved in a number of different activities, and we are very proud about the work we have done with MPA and IMDA with respect to the first electronic bill of lading transaction that we executed in month of March, which got presented by the minister in April. So I think, as we look at the journey, it is not looking at just a Dropbox kind of a scenario, which, where, you put a document and you could just send across to another document. It has to be viewed in the context of the trade. So the trade context varies across two industries, across different type of geographies, as well as different types of partners in the system, and different types of documents. Sometimes the certificate of origin is more important than bill of lading. Sometimes, the surveyor certificate is as important. So while we look at legal documents, and that's, I think the problem is already sorted here in Singapore, we are already looking at trade lanes, working together with Bahrain, looking together with other countries who have, Abu Dhabi, who has already supported the electronic trade routes. We are also working together with New Zealand to Singapore trade routes. So we are looking at the trade routes, which has a good support to digitize end-to-end from a cross-border point of view, and that has been our focus. if you look at the platform, it is as easy as you get started, subscribe to the node, and unlike the other blockchain platforms out there, ours is a private permission a platform which allows you to have each party at their own node, whereby they have their own information kept within their own node, and there is a platform which actually does the runtime consensus of those documents as you get those sent across in the workflow of the trade. The collaboration piece, which is the most important piece, I feel a lot of platform actually ignores. So there's a whole collaboration piece which is built in to really make sure that no two trades are same, and even no two trades are well defined to the point that you could actually kind of repeat those in a simple way. So you do need a collaboration. You need a quick way to work together. You need an audit trail. You need all of those capability, which we have made it available now in our production platform, which is already live for now more than 2 years. So, any party could come in, subscribe to the node, invite the business partner, and execute a trade. And like you can see here, number of elements are involved in the trade. We do support EBL options, and I'll discuss that as we go along in the presentation. But it is providing an end-to-end visibility of the trade, creating smart contracts, tracking it all the way through, linking it up to their operational systems, and giving them the real visibility in terms of saving time and effort as they execute their trade. So it's already production live for more than 2 years. We are focused on corporates. So, we already work together with a number of corporates with a trade trust in double-digit numbers of corporates who are already using our platform with the trade trust. We are focused heavily into interoperability. And that was one of the questions that came up, that you look at in the world of BL out there, there are 6-7 players. So how a corporate or a shipper on the earth is expected to understand all of those players and make sense out of that. So you need an end-to-end digitization framework, which actually kind of allows, one particular BL framework could link up to the other particular BL provider's framework. And over a period of time, we go into a scenario of no EBL or no BL or no rulebook kind of a scenario, which I think we have been working very closely with Singapore government and ICC DSI to support that. So interoperability is something really big. It's our belief that we have to give as less pain as possible to our customers. We have to make it as simple as possible. And we have to make sure that, we continue to hide the complexities from the customer to just help them to execute a trade. As part of the innovation that we continue to do, we have also added what we call cognitive document or automation module, which allows us to really take the accuracy of normal document OCR type solution to a grade level higher, to almost 90 to 95% accuracy across multilingual type of documents, and matching the commercial documents with the transport document, which is really a dream of a lot of people who are in the bank, or they want to really make sure that they could match the transport document to the commercial document. And we are very happy to report that we have that running, and a number of corporates and banks are already using that. Finally, it's all about reducing the risk, whether you are a shipper or you're a banker or a corporate. You want to make sure that you reduce the risk. You want to make sure that you kind of have a visibility of who the exporter is and who the importer is and what's going on, how I can reduce the fraud that's out there in the marketplace, where potentially some of the exporters are not putting anything that they claim in the container, or they are claiming multiple financing for the same thing that they're putting into the container. So the entire risk monitoring module is also something that we are very proud about. So when you look at DLT ledgers, and we have several customers who are already working on this. So this is not a conversation where we are looking for someone to come and do the POC. As I mentioned, we are the first one to report this, and I'm glad to report that number of repeat trades have happened since that first transaction that was reported by the minister, and we are in process of making sure that we kind of create this production rollout for multiple of those customers for the different trade flow routes. So the DLT ledger as a platform allows you to build a network for you to work together. It's one stop, so you're not looking to pick up the invoice from your C drive. You're actually picking it up from your own system where it got generated. You're looking to really have the entire smart contract for the industry that you work with, and also looking at a very simple formula that we work with, that every document that needs to be digitized at source. So linking that to the government effort that's happening in that area around common data infrastructure in Singapore. Obviously, all the work that we've done with NTP and Trade Trust continue to enrich and provide our customers a one-stop access. Next tech is really looking at interoperability and looking at EBL, various EBL solutions which are out there in the market, right? So whether it's I'll talk about our plan. It's coming into the next slide, but then looking at seamless connectivity to solution which is out there in the market, as well as looking at working together with ICC to come out with solution which has really getting rid of this concept of rule book and coming out with something which one could just work together with, by just confirming accept and can have the whole transaction of the EBL that can be executed using that. And finally, control over the data in terms of who has the residency, who manages that data, etc. So this is our view. And, I think there was a question about what happens to the 6-7 different providers which are out there in the market. We are a super connector. So we are working very closely, obviously, to really provide our customers a visibility of what this means, right? So where, you need to see how you can scale up. It doesn't make sense for a carrier to invest into 2 or 3 types of EBL solution. It just doesn't. It doesn't make sense for a bank to invest into 2 or 3 type of it. It does make sense for someone to look at an super connector who could actually provide not only just one solution around EBL, but overall end-to-end trade digitization, where you can link your entire supply chain to the trade that you are doing. So, this probably could give an angle where, we are already working, for example, with Coda. We are already working very heavily with Trade Trust. We are looking to see how we can do an interoperability with Bolero, looking to see how we can do interoperability with Wave, etc. And we are making sure that, we could actually work in a scenario where we can increase the digital trade, which is really the key parameter around which we work. And that requires us to really have a very strict adoption approach, very strict business approach. Well, the technology exists. Technologies like Borello existed for 30 years, and it's a great application, great software. But the reason where they fall short was really around the adoption. How can I make it easier for my corporates and my shipper and banks so that I actually can be seamless into their operation? And that's where our goal is. And working together with Trade Trust, we are looking to leverage quite a lot of digital economic agreements that we have done with Australia, with Chile, and a number of other countries. And we are seeing how, if we can embed that within that with agreement, it really kind of makes it easier for us to get the adoption at the country level. And that makes the number of trades that one can go digital faster. And this is the piece that came out from MPA, and I think thank you so much from MPA's support for making this happen. And this is something, we have executed a number of repeats since this, but I think it goes beyond, to say that there is huge amount of saving, in not just operationally, but also from a point of view of, looking at the situation where, endemic that we are in now, this is going to continue to persist for maybe going into 2022. We are very proud about making this happen first time, and we are working now in the second half of the year to make sure that we do report when you have a next call like this. We report number of such repeat transactions that have happened using the platform, and how customers are starting to adopt onto this. So you could get started fairly quickly if you are a corporate out there, or a carrier out there, or a bank out there. I think within about 4 to 6 weeks, you can have a full production live trade that could be set up with different parties. And there is a great support given by MDA on the advanced digital scheme. So, if you are a corporate shipper or a bank who is operating out of Singapore, there is a support given. to really make this happen. And then, we typically within 3 months, we kind of get into the production for a particular corporate or a carrier in terms of how they could use this to their advantage to do their repeat flow using DLT ledger for end-to-end trade execution. So that's the presentation that I wanted to share. I wanted to leave some time open for any questions if anyone has. Sorry, I've not been monitoring the Q&A, so if there are any questions, I think we can take that towards the end of it.
Yeah, we will take the questions during the Q&A. So thank you very much, Atul. So with that, I'd like to invite our final speaker, Himanshu, to begin his presentation, please. Himanshu.
Hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. I can't see your. Yeah. Okay. Done. Yep.
Okay. I think you can switch on my video as well if you'd like to. Okay. Yep. So what I'm focusing today is, obviously it is difficult when you are the last presenter because a lot of things have been said and discussed. But I'm taking a view where we are looking at it from a bit of a end-to-end angle, because not from only from the technology perspective. Because when we look at today how the trade is, it is like 85% is still facilitated by trade finance. Average documentation is taking 8 days to complete from the bank's perspective. I'm talking from the bank's end, and less than 3% of it is still end-to-end electronic. So this is actually the challenge which we are facing today. Though we have been working, as my esteemed colleagues have mentioned, that for last 25 years, there have been solutions which a few companies have tried to implement. We haven't seen much of the success. And why is that? So what our focus is, obviously, there are benefits of electronic bill of lading, which we have already underlined. But I'll also focus on the disadvantages or the challenges, how I like to mention. First of all, was definitely about the legal framework. And we were lucky that today it is an inflection point where we are seeing more and more regulators getting up and making those amendments to the legal framework. Singapore being the latest one. I think in March, we amended our Electronic Transactions Act, and now it allows the electronic bill of lading. But still, that is one part of it. As we go across the globe, we see this problem happening everywhere else as well. There are some other challenges as well, which I like to highlight. So obviously, underlining the benefits first, that the speed is there, which we just mentioned, that it is instantaneous. The cost is definitely reduced. We can reuse the data. Security is there. We have seen that forged documents, fraudulent transactions, multiple financing have all rocked the banking sector over the last few years. So this definitely is a solution which is in the right direction. And definitely by data reuse, it is about the operational efficiencies. Now coming to the challenges, legal I touched upon. In addition to legal, the technology which is existing today and which we have tried implementing over the last couple of years, it is a closed loop and common platform technology. Everybody is required to come on that platform to talk to each other. It is as good as saying that we can have email as long as we are all on Gmail. So we have to think out of the box how we implement it, which is more interoperable, which is more open source, so that more people can come on it. Currently, I think I'll touch upon that what we are working on today, but we have not seen commercial solutions which are focused on that. Obviously, the standardization was not there. The common set of rules were not there. And it was difficult to scale these kind of things because everybody was supposed to join on a single platform, work towards that single platform and create that monopoly. That is the challenge which we were facing. And obviously with other documents like certificate of quality, certificate of origin to be brought on that platform, that is something which we were facing a challenge as well. So good part, legislation changes have started happening. Abu Dhabi was the one where it was done in, I think, early part of the year or end December. And now Singapore has done that. What we read is that UK is already reviewing the legal system. So if they do it, an English law amendment will definitely help, considering most of the international trade is based on English law. Closed loop solutions are there. So Today we have Bolero SDocs, where you all have to be on the same platform. This is something which is a shortcoming, which we feel. And there is a failure due to the trust and interoperability of these because their standards are not tokenized. They don't work with each other. You cannot create a document on Bolero and take it on SDocs and then use it somewhere else. So that is still something which we are facing the challenges on. So now I'll talk about a few initiatives which we are doing in Singapore, which started a couple of years back with our engagement with the MPA, IMDA, and where we are today. And when we are ending this presentation, I'll also don my hat as a committee member for the enterprise for the Emerging Stronger Task Force, the Alliance for Action, which was created last year as a result of the pandemic to see what can be done in this direction, where we can digitize the ecosystem and create this trust in the network. So one is definitely what we believe is that the requirements should be, the solution should be interoperable. I think Atul mentioned about that has to be done. Open source, because there cannot be a monopoly of one provider. We have to have multiple providers. We have to have Yahoo Mail, Gmail, or your corporate mail. We have to set up standards which are interoperable, and email created from a system should be readable with any other system. And same has to be done for these. It has to be an open chain, scalable, and the uniqueness has to be established. So today the problem was to create a uniqueness, we were creating closed loop. Now we have to think out of the box how to have the uniqueness, but still have it in an open source and open chain. What I'll just underline and steal some slides, some parts from Sin Yong as well is the IMDA's role, which has been very critical in Singapore over the last few years. They were the ones, in addition to providing the technical solution, they went ahead and created the legal framework and legislation changes, which now give recognition to the Bill of Ladings. The Parliament has already approved and granted the rights. For market development part, they have created Trade Trust, which Atul was talking about, which creates these interoperable tokens. And definitely they are encouraging this shift towards EBLs, and we are in discussions with them as well as our clients to see how we can implement it. Now, just talking about ETA and Trade Trust. The ETA was the first enacted in Singapore in 1998, which was based on the model law. But it was pinned upon 3 principles, which you can read about. But at that time, it was explicitly excluding the use of interoperable electronic equivalents of the negotiable instruments. Now that has been allowed. On Trade Trust part, if you look at it, that creates a framework of primarily with the 4 objectives. One is how to create the legally recognized cross-border documents, how to enable the interoperability of these systems, and multiple partners to integrate using open source, and now certify the technological solutions which meet these standards. So we have been working with MPA and IMD on this, and we believe that this is the inflection point which brings in where we can deliver something which can scale it up. So this is how the progress has been. It started from manual paper BLs, legislation changed, now establishment of closed loop solutions, but based on open source, which will then result in multiple partners coming in and then joining this stream. But now the challenge we are all on, that we know that this is how it works. But what is the first key step which everybody has to take? If I'm an importer or an exporter, what is the next step which we have to do? That is a question which we face with a lot of people. They come back and say, okay, the Trade Trust is a new platform. I want to join it. What should I do? But actually, it is not a platform. So now that is where we need the support and handhold the clients to take on this journey, where we will be working with different partners to see that how we can embark on this, where the changes can be implemented, and take everybody along to digitize this whole flow. I think a few people were also asking that, is it blockchain powered? Yes, this is blockchain powered. And that brings in the security to the network as well. And this is not a platform. This is an open source where we have to all come on the blockchain rather than on a single platform. And then we can directly integrate using the IMD technology or use those open APIs to integrate with our own systems. So that is how we have to do it. We have to demonstrate the benefits of it and then work towards the implementation. At the end now, I'll also talk about a bit about Emerging Stronger, the AFA or Alliance for Action vision, which was there, that we have to create a one Singapore supply chain with a common data infrastructure, which is an open system where all the participants in the ecosystem would be interacting. And this will now be able to supplement the exchange of instruments, because this CDI is data exchange platform. With this, coupled with IMDA's trade trust, can really deliver the punch, where the data can be transferred directly from the source. And then we can also have the inclusion of the EBLs and transferable negotiable instruments over the platform. So these two technologies have to marry together for this to scale up. So the Alliance for Action, you will hear more about CDI in coming up over the next few months, where we are working with the government as well as the public-private partnership to deliver this. This again will then work with the different stakeholders and create the ecosystem where we will be delivering the end-to-end digitization of it. I think that's all from my side. So Sadiq, I think you can take over now.
Thank you, Himanshu. Before we begin the Q&A session, we'd like to invite you to participate in a poll. So you just enter your answers and just click submit. We give this about 2 minutes. Okay, thank you for your participation. So with that, I would like to invite Sin Yong from IMDA, as well as Thomas, MPA's Chief Technology Officer, to start the Q&A proper. I'd also like to invite the panelists to switch on your cameras for the Q&A segment. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. Sadiq, can you allow? I cannot turn on my video.
One second.
I guess I was sneaking in.
That's all right. Thank you.
Yep.
I also cannot turn on my video.
Okay, Siong, you're good. Okay, now let's go to the last segments of today's session, the panel session and Q&A. Today, the second webinar, we have a lot of Q&As coming in, and I think we have addressed a large part of it by the panelists through the online Q&A platforms. But nevertheless, we'll handle the rest of the questions that are outstanding. Probably I will start off with a more general questions. Okay, so the bills of lading is a key document used in cross-border trade. It often passes through many parties, such as the carrier, shipper, trader, bank, before reaching the consignee. So for the panelists, who do you think will benefit the most from digitalizing this BL document, and which party in the supply chain will be the key influencer in pushing for its adoption?
Would you like us to just jump in?
Yeah, you can jump in. Yeah, got it. Please go ahead.
Okay, so sorry for jumping, but you know us, startup entrepreneurs, we always jump right in. So I will give a slightly more sophisticated. The biggest beneficiary by definition will be the end customer who goes to the supermarket and buys something from the shelf, because eventually the fact that we are using documents adds inefficiencies to the entire supply chain, and the costs vary between the different participants. Some will say that the banks will enjoy the most, some will say that the exporter. It depends exactly on how you calculate. Every company along the supply chain will, of course, see a result in the bottom line, in the savings, but every operator along the chain will have a completely different experience. And this is the biggest added value. This is why participants are now going digital, because when you have a bill of lading, which you are not sure where it is at Friday evening, and you don't want to go back to the office, so either you wait until Monday, or you just go to the office on Friday evening. Now, of course, when you have digital documents, this problem does not exist. So yes, there will be direct cost savings for every participant along the supply chain, depending on the transaction, but the biggest beneficiaries are actually the operation people across the supply chain who will not need to handle paper anymore. Their day-to-day activity will turn up to be just much more accurate, efficient, and to be honest, also much more exciting, because this is how most of the industries are working today. Paper is hardly used in other places. As for the initial part, my position by definition, it's the carriers. It's the documents of the carriers. It's their they have the biggest network, and we are also seeing it. It's not longer proof of concept, because now the carriers picked up this glove and started promoting adoption, and you are seeing already thousands of transactions per week which are electronic, and this is just thanks to the ocean carriers.
Yeah, thanks, Gadi.
My turn to jump in.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Actually, I've been working on this EBL for the past 25 years. This problem of EBL is over the last 25 years. And I think Gadi correctly pointed out that ultimately the end beneficiary are the consumer like you and I. However, this is what we call the indirect beneficiaries. Those people, in our opinion, that will really directly benefit from digitizing this piece of paper are the workers, the operational staff, the banking clerks has to deal with this paper on a daily basis. But in terms of the key influencer, I have a different view from Geddy, because over the last 25 years, when we try to actually develop EBL solution, try to promote this solution, initially our thinking has always been, hey, since the carrier are the one that issuing, let's go to the carrier. And guess what? The carrier said, hey, my customer didn't ask for it. And so we asked the carrier, okay, why don't you approach your customer to convert them from paper to E? Then the carrier, together with us, approach their customer. And the customer tell the carrier, look, I don't want electronic. Why? Because the bank doesn't accept it. And when we go to the bank, ask them, why are you not accepting it? Oh, because my counterparty bank doesn't accept it. So it's to us, it's actually a chicken and egg problem. So there's a reason why in Trade Plus, we have actually classified the target audience of this EBL into three main different groups. Those that issue the title document, those that buy and sell with the title document, and those that finances the title document. And these three groups of parties really need to work hand in hand in order to create a network effect for this EBL to take off. This is our view.
Sin Yong, just to add on that, I see when I look at this, who economically makes the most benefit out of this? That is generally the exporter, because quickly getting the documents, quickly negotiating the documents under the LC allows them to take the money faster home. And that has been the approach which traditionally was there. But can they do it? You need only one showstopper to stop it, the whole flow. It can be either the applicant to say that, see, my legal system doesn't recognize it, or it can be the bank. So at this stage, what exactly is required is that we do need all of them to agree upon this, but we also need the system of moving from electronic to physical and physical to electronic whenever required, because you cannot have everybody, all regulations changed in one go. That's my view.
Right. Actually, every party along the supply chain benefits. Take, for example, the carrier. Like today, when a carrier issue a piece of paper BL and put the BL into circulation, does the carrier really know where this piece of paper goes to before it reaches maybe the port of destination? And when the consignee ultimately surrendered that piece of paper to claim its cargo? The answer is no. But at least when you digitize this piece of paper and put it online, actually, you'll be able to track which are the ones still in circulation, which are the ones that are lost, which are the ones that has been surrendered back to you. And I think this is a very important point and a big leap in towards how a carrier manage their BL in circulation versus what we have today.
Yeah, Sin Young, just to add that, right? It is about the trade flow and the pair, right? Because that's what we have seen. And also 20% of the cost is on documentation in trade execution, right? Yes, maybe we can allocate part of that to BL, but there's also other costs along the way, right? So I think it is collaborative nature of the shipper, the carrier, the bank, and the exporter or an importer who needs to work in tandem. And we need to make it easy for the industry to say, okay, we should look at these trade flows and this country's trade flows, and let's try with that, because then there is a lot more sense for adoption. But yeah, there's no one party which is beneficiary. I agree with you. It's a network. Yeah, Thomas.
Yeah, Andrea, you want to say something? Please go ahead.
No. I'm enjoying the conversation because, you know,
okay.
You're all very young on this panel, but I remember ordering things from a catalog, you know, and having to send in a mail slip and with a check. and then, you know, waiting for one day the parcel to arrive. I think that's where we are. And, you know, and we're going towards e-commerce, basic e-commerce. So I think it's easy to understand, but as you said, it's a question of making sure that all the elements of the chain are still attached. And that's the difficult part, is getting all the parties on board. And so what we've done is we've gone, you know, step by step, country by country, trade by trade, partner by partner. And I think that's how you bring the network together. And then thankfully we have all that, all the technology that you described. And it's, to me, it's as simple as, you know, using a credit card, but it took a while to get that digitized.
I would like to actually also, as Andre mentioned, and everyone can see, I'm young as well, but what I've seen is actually the power of the carriers, as Andre mentioned. They go port by port, and their power and network and influence in the network is amazing. Also, by the way, if I connect it to a different subject, which is very well discussed in the industry, when Andre calls and say, I want to see interoperability between two networks, so suddenly you see that everything starts to work. When Andre Teams calls, and I can tell you that we are already in discussions and we are exploring interoperability with other EBL services. We're not saying that it's easy, it's very challenging, and we need, of course, to work on many different aspects, the technology and the legal infrastructure, but definitely the discussion is there, and this is, and same thing exactly goes for the digitization. My personal opinion is that the carriers are going to surprise the industry, and at least this is what we are experiencing. So it's, I would say it's the chicken and it's the carriers.
Yeah, I think it's good to have different views from the panel member. And based on our last market survey and as well as the previous webinars, it seems that the market structure within the container segment, the bulk cargo and liquid cargo is a bit different. And therefore, the beneficiaries, while it's spread across the value chain, the different players will benefit at a different proportion. And also in terms of the influencer for the container segment, in our last finding is that it seems that the container lines has a lot more say in the container segment, whereas in the bulk cargo, clearly the shipment of cargo is just homogeneous, 1 or 2 or 3 types, and then the shippers actually have a lot more say in that. So maybe part of the differing views in terms of influencer is also based on that. Just on that, I just also want to ask the panel the next question, which is in terms of the level of adoption of the EBLs in these 3 segments, what is your sensing in the container, bulk, and the liquid? Which one has the most adoption and which one has the least today? And if you have some reasons to explain it, that will also be good. Thank you.
Well, I think from let's say from our side, obviously when you're dealing with bulk, or oil, and you have one ship, one bill of lading, it's an easy process. I think in the container business, obviously ships are getting bigger and bigger, but our in terms of I can give you some very basic numbers. When we started pilots a few months ago, I think within 6 to 8 months we had about 20,000 bills of ladings issued, and that was really a pilot mode. And now we've gone live since end of April, and I hope we'll see these numbers increase. I think that we're still going at a slow pace because we need to get all the parties on board. And of course, thank you to MPA and colleagues for participating. And then we need to get adoption. Once we get adoption, I believe it'll go extremely fast. So we should all be ready. And of course, interoperability is key because I don't think we should be competing on these solutions eventually.
Thomas, just to add on to it, actually, this is an interesting take when you said that there is a different adoption rate. And I think that is also determined by who has the negotiating power. And you're right that when we saw bulk, we saw that the beneficiaries were the ones who at that time were dictating the terms. So we saw a very rapid adoption of EBLs for a very short period of time, a couple of years back, when a lot of producers started insisting on the applicants accepting that. So in that case, you have more of power in the hand of the beneficiary. And I think, as Andre mentioned, if you look at more on the container one, that is where the power to negotiate or power to influence is with the shipping lines. Because if they say that this is what I'm giving, more often than not, people will accept it rather than, because they're not chartering the whole vessel. They're just having a few containers on the vessel. So the power of balance actually determines that who's defining it.
I'm going to put Gadi and Andrew on the spot a little bit because I see different statistics. Okay, of course, DCSA did a survey 1 year ago. The level of adoption in the container industry, less than 0.1%. And I saw in the presentations earlier, the level of adoption in the container was actually quite high, 48% over. So I'm just wondering, what's the sensing from the panel here in terms of the actual level of adoption generally, what's the sensing? And specific to Andrea, within the MSC, roughly what's the sensing of the portion of the BLs being implemented electronically? Thanks.
It's a tough question. I mean, very simply, because we only started end of April to offer the solution publicly. It takes quite some time initially. We got a lot of registrations through our through the website. We had about, I think, 2,000 registrations in the first month. But then, of course, when a customer registers, they need to get their colleagues on board, and so that takes a little bit more time. So I think I'll be able to share numbers in the coming months. It's a bit difficult still today. I mentioned the pilots, and I was quite surprised. I didn't think we would be able to do so many just as a pilot.
Yeah,
so yes,
thanks,
I'm being a bit cautious.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Gadi, to you.
Yeah, I'll be happy actually to, and we already have one let's say industry participant from the carriers world, which is already past the 5%. I cannot give exact numbers because we are talking, of course, it's not our numbers of adoption, which means that when the technology is right, when the momentum is there, technology spreads very, very fast. Now, eventually, if I speak about, for example, why the banking industry is still not seeing all of that, the carriers are sitting at both corners. They are sitting at the beginning of the transaction and at the end. Then you have the freight forwarders. So in the carriers, we are already past the 50% adoption. When we move, to be honest, I'm not familiar with any carrier who doesn't have any tool, but of course I'm speaking only on our numbers. Then you have the freight forwarders. Specifically in Wave, already 24 of the top 50 freight forwarders and hundreds of the smaller ones are already in the network and are using it. When you go to the buyers and sellers, of course, we are talking about millions, so we cannot calculate percents and look good, let's say it like that. As for the banking industry, eventually it will be absorbed. Currently, we are working on the activities which are out, and we are waiting for the banking industry to be to see where the industry is leading, to see the trend, to make their choices. We know that it's tough choices for a bank to adopt a new system is not a simple mission. I'm sure that Himanshu can confirm that. So I'm very optimistic regarding this time. This time it will be different. The technology is different, the legal environment is different, and the momentum is completely different. And of course, we can never miss a good crisis. And the one that we are all experiencing these days actually points out that paper is not just a bother, it's actually a business killer in some cases. So everything is much faster.
Yeah, thanks, Gadi. I think we have quite some discussion on industry acceptance and level of adoption. Maybe I'll move to the next subject area, which is relating to Singapore being the first shipping and trading nations to amend our legislation to adopt the UNCITRAL model law and electronic transferable records. And this allows us to recognize EBL as equivalent to paper BL if those requirements are met. And of course, the G7 has also publicly committed towards this cause, and we'll see a similar development in the next few years. So the question is, how does the panel foresee the future state to be in terms of the use of the contractual agreement, contractual law, which is the existing arrangement, which has a certain also recognitions from a P&I Club, versus the use of a statutory law that recognizes BL? Do you think it will remain status quo, transitions towards the use of statutory law, or a mix of both 5 years from now? Any views from the panel?
So I'll start that, Thomas. I would think it would be basically transiting towards statutory law in terms of the three options you gave, right? And we also must recognize that there are certain countries in the world who would like to take, the next steps. Then there is also a great amount of work that ICC is doing, right, in terms of digital standard initiative right here in Singapore, to really kind of demystify this whole concept of rule book and in some ways, making sure this P&I club is available to everybody who has a mobile phone and they can click on it, right? So with their digitums. So while the concept has served its purpose in the past, I don't see it's going to stay in the same shape and form that you see today, 5 years from now. It has to be evolved to a situation where in the countries like Singapore and let's say UK, for example, who is also now on the path of this, we would be able to get all the carriers when the country of law on which the BL is issued move towards to that and making sure that we remove all of this operational hurdles, which has been historically there, which is still pointing to a 0.1% of adoption rate that you mentioned, Thomas. So we really need, as an industry, to use this to remove some of the old tape, if you will, come out with something which is dramatically different, and I think come out with a very simple way of communicating this from an industry point of view. So I see a huge, maybe a middle path towards to the last path is probably my prediction. But
yeah, since we're touching on the topic of MLETR and statutory law and interoperability issues, maybe hear the views from Sin Yong as well.
Yep. You're on mute, Sin Yong.
Sin Yong on mute.
I muted it because my neighbor was doing a renovation. I'm sure you have realized.
Yes.
Actually, Andre bring up a very good point about the catalog order ring system. And this shows maybe his age and my age is almost quite close. You see, today we go online, we want something, we go online, click some button, next day you see things arrive at our doorstep without a blink of an eye. Why are we able to do this today? If we were to take a step back and look at it, it is because our law has changed to be aligned internationally with the model law on electronic commerce, published by UNCITRAL in 1996, if I remember the date correctly. And if you look at it, we took 25 years to reach to where we are today. And today, if you talk to UNCITRAL, they will tell you about more than 100 economies of the world actually adopted this MLEC. In contrast, MLETR was published in 2016 or 2017, about 2-3 years ago, right? 3 years, more than 3 years ago. And if let's say, by any chance, MLETR follow the same pattern, we have to wait 25 years in order for all the rulebook to disappear. So even if we have COVID, even if people are more used to electronic, okay, we maybe shorten the time it takes to maybe 1/4 of the time. So 1/4 of 25 years is about more than 5 years. So our view is that in 5 years' time, actually it's a very short period of time for legislative changes to be made across the world. So there will be bound to have a mixture of contractual framework solution and those statutory law solution out there. Because for the simple fact today, you still sign contract on paper, right? And not all contracts are electronic. It has got to do with nature of human nature and the way of how businesses is being conducted. So this is actually our view. And really, whether a BL uses paper or electronic really doesn't depend on the carrier, because it really depends on the customer or the carrier And how the customer or the carrier decide whether I want paper or electronic really depends who they trade with and whether the country that they trade with recognizes electronic BL as a document of title without a contractual framework, of course, or has the customer signed to the same contractual framework. And this is where we are coming from. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Sin Yong. Given the time, I will just go to the final questions for the panel, which is how do you think the use of electronic trade documents, in particular EBL, would transform existing business processes or business models? For the carriers, for example, they will charge a certain rate for BLs today. They will also charge for subsequent amendments. Does that mean that it will be lowered in future with the documents because of the cost of doing so has decreased? And for the banks, would this lead to changes in payment period, earlier payment because they get hold of the EBL earlier? Would there be any difference in terms of the lending costs because the risk is lowered? Yeah, maybe Himanshu or any panel member want to look at the question?
Thomas, so from the bank perspective, I'd say that definitely what we realized is that during pandemic, there was disruption in the courier services and all. And there were the documents stuck overseas, cannot be delivered in Singapore. And definitely if there was a solution which was widely adoptable and people were using it, it would have definitely reduced the cost. It would have definitely let the dollars out to the clients faster and the discharge of cargoes earlier. So from the bank's perspective, moving to the electronic documents will help all of them in the chain, the buyer, the seller, as well as the banks in getting hold of it.
Happy from my end, I'm sure.
Yeah, Andre, maybe a question, or maybe Andre can help us. What do you see? Have you done the modeling in terms of, let's say, if you do 100,000 BL on paper today, and you get, $100 to issue and $100 to change and $50 to switch BL, and that's the traditional world. And then you move to electronic. How much of a loss that is to your revenue, Andre, or there is no loss at all?
That's a good question. At least in this particular case, I'm not the deciding party, so I can answer very. No, I think the reality is, like any new process, you need to reach critical mass. So if we're, if in 5 years, as Sin Yong was saying, we're still going to be doing 5% or 10% of original bills, then I don't see a big change. If within the next couple of months and even years, we see a very high progression, then I think we can start to change also, our internal processes. And then also, if we get efficiencies, there's no reason we shouldn't pass that on to the customer, but we're not there yet.
I'll be happy to actually jump on that. We are always having a question, who will save the most? Now, this is a hard question to tackle, but I can tell you who will save the least. It's the carriers, because the issuance of the bill of lading, everything is exactly the same. And this has to be very, very clear and out there. Andre is, again, he's not the one who print the document, but just for the sake of the argument, Andre prints the document on one side and receives it on the other side. And to be honest, he doesn't care how it gets there, and he doesn't care what is happening. The issuance of the bill of lading, the shipping instruction, everything else along the way is exactly the same from his points of view. So the industry is going to save a lot for the digitization of trade. The carriers are going to save the least, but they are the ones who are spreading the network, which means that the amount of employees which are held, and sorry for jumping in, but the industry needs to see the amount of efforts that the carriers are investing today in order for this to succeed. Some carriers, they are building a designated EBA, electronic bills of lading team, who are just picking up the phone and calling consignees to onboard. They are speaking to customs all around the world. So most likely, prices will be reduced over time. if you ask what will be reduced, I don't think that it will be the document issuance, because yes, they are saving the paper, but how much an actual paper costs when you don't need to transfer it. However, trade is definitely going to be much more efficient, much faster. The carriers are also going to be beneficiary, but they will only be able to enjoy the efficiency once we move to 100% paperless, and they will not need, for example, front desks. But these are minor changes. I'm sure that we will see huge savings in efficiencies, in times. Not all of them, by the way, will be monetary. Just having a better work experience, in my perspective, and also based on 100% of the feedback that we are getting, is much more important than the saving of the couriers themselves. So sorry for jumping in this as well.
Yeah, thank you, Gary. I think this is especially true when the carriers have to deal with both physical and electronic documents with the customers during the transition period. So definitely there will be going to be some kind of increase in cost during the transition. I just want to hear if there's any other last view from the panel member before we come to the closing part.
No, I just wanted to say that, Thomas, that look, you know, Singapore government, IMDA, MPA, ESG has done a great job for anyone to really get on board and get started, right? So I think if you want to get a real piece of this, please get started. And, you know, with any one of the panel members can help. But I do feel that, you know, asking more question is not really the next action. Doing actually a trade would be the next action, and we are here to support as a team.
Fully supportive.
Okay, so if any other views from the members or comments? Okay, thank you. If not, then that will mark our last question for the day. And I hope it has been a useful session for you to understand the various options, challenges, potential benefits, and understanding the journey of those who have already started using EBLs. This is indeed something that requires a whole of supply chain approach where no single party can achieve it on our own. As such, MPA has launched a call for proposal in April, supported by IMDA and the DCSA, to bring the industry together to develop and pilot adopt EBL solutions. Such solutions will address some of the pain points that we discussed today by being interoperable across digital ecosystem, leveraging on internationally harmonized law, MLETR, as well as aligning to international standards such as DCSA. And for that, our call for proposal is to open our MPA website for parties who are interested to be listed as an interested party to participate in pilots or trials for discovery purpose. Please submit your information to MPA, specifically to Lo Sing Yi is actually listed on MPA website to indicate interest, and we can actually list you on the website for the supply chain parties to contact you to form a project for EBL. And otherwise, we also look forward to supply chain players coming together to pilot new EBL use cases. Lastly, I would like to thank all our panelists, Gadi, Andrea, Atu, Himanshu, and Sinyong, for taking their time to share their views with us today, and for everyone taking the time to learn from one another. Have a good day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
Thomas.
And thank you
for leading
so
this
much, IMDA,
panel
MPA.
and for all your activities.